Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Digital Humanities Working Group lecture today, April 13th, 2015. Before the main event, a little bit of housekeeping. I wish to thank the Institute for the Humanities, especially Sue Levine and Linda Vavra, for their continual support of our working group. Thanks to the Institute's generosity, we're able to bring in outside DH speakers. So keep in mind that we're hosting another talk right here a week from today with Megan Berno and Jim Lefeger. From DePaul, we're talking about diving into DH Digital Humanities Certificate from the library archivist perspective. Second, I want to thank Tracy Seneca for pre-vetting and recommending today's speaker, who is Jennifer Wolfe. Jen is a Midwesterner, having lived in Iowa, Chicago, St. Louis, Iowa, Seattle, no real winters there, Chicago, Iowa, Chicago. Her education profile includes a BA in English from the University of Iowa and an MLIS from the University of Washington. Prior to joining the Newberry Library, where she sports the title of Digital Initiatives Librarian, Wolfe has worked at the Experience Music Project, the Rock and Roll Museum, the University of Iowa Libraries. Since she believes speed and efficiency trump fullness of detail, I shall cede her the floor for a presentation entitled High Impact Learning One Page at a Time, Engaging Students and the Public with Digitized Manuscript Collections.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ben, and for all of you for coming here. We are a small but high-quality group. And contrary to my personal credo, I am going to be going into a little more detail about my qualifications to discuss today's topic, high-impact learning, digitized manuscripts. I am not an instructor. I have no educational background in teaching, and I've never actually taught a class. In terms of historic manuscripts, I'm not a curator or subject specialist librarian, so I lack an advanced degree along with my library degree. So if you were to show me a historic manuscript, I might be able to tell you that it's old. It is from the past, but that's probably about it. In terms of technology, do not be fooled by the word digital in my job title. Up until a few months ago, I spent a decade at the University of Iowa Libraries, where I made frequent and very grateful calls to the library's IT department. Since moving to the Newberry in January, I am the guy on the other end of those calls, which has been a challenge for everyone involved. So what am I doing here? For most of my pre-digital humanities career, I was coordinating digital library collections, which is putting digitized primary source materials from archives and special collections online. So in that role, I worked with curators who did material selection, with conservation staff who repaired and stabilized the physical objects, preservation staff who reformatted them into zeros and ones, IT staff who worked on uploading and systems maintenance, catalogers who described the items, graphic designers, and programmers who worked on user interfaces, and publicity staff who promoted collection launches. Any link in that chain could and frequently would break down due to equipment or personnel issues or plain old institutional inertia. And it was my responsibility to keep multiple initiatives moving through these departments without having any actual authority over any of them. So keeping projects running and occasionally even finishing one was no small task, and it provided good practice for working in digital humanities, which, in contrast to analog humanities, is inherently collaborative. As DH project coordinator, I worked as a cross-community translator between scholars and technologists, while as a librarian, I also advocated for the information resource needs of the user and for long-term preservation and access of digital publication. It is from that perspective that I will finally start telling you about my work on developing a transcription crowdsourcing project and incorporating it into the undergraduate classroom. So just to make sure we are all on the same page, the term crowdsourcing was coined in 2005 by Jeff Howe and Mark Robinson in an article for Wired magazine, and since then it's become a fuzzy term to describe all kinds of activities. But shown here is a recent definition from a peer-reviewed article in the Journal of Information Science. There are a lot of words here, but the key elements are it's online, there's an open call for volunteers, and the work has to be mutually beneficial. So one side receives the end product of the work, and the other receives the satisfaction in learning something new or making a contribution towards a larger goal, etc. And having established my lack of scholarly cred, you will not be surprised to learn that I found from the Wikipedia entry on crowdsourcing. But that is only appropriate because Wikipedia itself is the world's most successful crowdsourcing project. So the term was coined in 2005. By 2008, libraries, archives, and museums had started to develop cultural heritage crowdsourcing projects in which they seek help from the public to improve access to digital collections. In January of that year, the Library of Congress launched a pilot project that would eventually become the Flickr Commons. LC initially uploaded 3,000 historic photos to Flickr and invited the public to tag, comment, and add identification information. Within the first 24 hours, those 3,000 images had garnered over 1 million views. By October, the public had added more than 7,000 comments and 67,000 tags. In July of 2008, the National Library of Australia launched a crowdsourcing project that invited the public to correct OCR text in historic newspapers. 6 months in, the public had corrected 2 million lines of text in 100,000 articles. So both of these projects continue to be wildly successful, inspiring many institutions to create photo tagging and OCR projects of their own. In early 2011, the New York Public Library launched a transcription crowdsourcing project called What's on the Menu. So instead of correcting automatically generated text, the public was invited to type it in from scratch, since the historic menus dating back to the 1840s had too much variation in fonts and layout to generate usable OCR. 3 months after launch, the public had completed the entire collection of the initial offering of 3,000 menus. It was around this time that the University of Iowa Libraries was wrapping up a 2-year scanning initiative for 20,000 handwritten pages of Civil War diaries and letters to commemorate the sesquicentennial. While brainstorming ways to promote the launch, our special collections department suggested crowdsourcing transcription, so we threw something together almost as an afterthought. At the time, there wasn't much literature on the topic, and we had almost no programming resources, so we put together a web form with a few lines of code that pulled the page image and its metadata from our digital library, displayed with a box for typing in the transcription and a submit button. That would generate an email that had to be manually cut and pasted back into the digital library metadata record. So the site was kind of held together with duct tape and string and student workers, but it more or less worked. While we lacked technical infrastructure, we knew we were really strong in terms of content. We could not have chosen better than the Civil War, even if we planned it, which we didn't. It turns out that in terms of historic events, that one is very popular. And I don't know if any of you have asked. Yeah, so you probably know about this. Civil War materials are one of Iowa's collecting strengths, encompassing a wide range of experiences from officers and foot soldiers to nurses and doctors and folks back home. So here are just a few examples. This is an 1862 letter from Lieutenant Andrew Davis to his wife Sarah describing the Battle of Shiloh. A couple of pages in, he writes, "About a quarter of a mile from the landing, we first come to the dead bodies, and I did not suppose that there was an acre of ground for 4 miles wide and 8 miles long, but what had a dead body on it. In one place, I counted 7 rebels piled on top of each other where they had stood at their cannon and fought. The sights were horrid indeed. In some cases, they appeared to have been shot dead and had died without a struggle, and again the features and limbs were greatly contorted as though they had died in the most bitter agony. And again you would see one with his head entirely shot away, then one cut entirely in two, and again you would see them with their legs or arms shut off, and several instances where they were so mangled that it would be almost impossible to tell that they had ever been a human being. And I will stop reading there. It does continue in the game for quite a while. But there's also family drama. This will help make up for that. This is a letter from Quartermaster Ferdinand Winslow in 1862. My dear son Herman, Papa loves you very much. He knows that you are such a good boy and that you love your mama with all your heart. Papa kisses the paper right inside the ring. And so if you will kiss it too, it is like kissing Papa. You must also let dear Francis and the little darling Sophie kiss the ring so that Papa knows that all his children love him. So that was heartbreaking, but I'm happy to be able to tell you that everything worked out for Papa and Herman and Sophie, less so for Francis. But the last example, this is from the diary of Private Henry Brockway. And those of you who have worked with historic diaries will not be surprised to learn that he likes to observe the weather. So Monday, no drills, and it snowed all day. Tuesday, wood chopping, ground covered with snow. Wednesday, guard duty, weather staying cold. So it's not super exciting, but it does give you a view of the war that you don't typically see in terms of history from the ground up. This guy is literally talking about the ground. So armed with our great content and our less great digital tool, we launched the Civil War Transcription project in May of 2011. So we launched a little fanfare, and the fanfare continued to stay pretty small for a while, but we were true believers, so we kept promoting the site, and usage slowly grew until one morning we received this mysterious email in the project inbox saying, your site has been found on reddit.com, et cetera. Consider allocating more bandwidth, or you may risk the site going down as thousands of interested persons are accessing the site being unable to partake. And I thought, well, clearly this is somehow a Nigerian scam. And I didn't even know what Reddit was. It was 2011. I had 2-year-old twins at home, so I didn't know what anything was. But mostly I thought, we're on a university server. I think we can handle this. But as it turned out, we did not handle it. And this is an actual view of our web statistics from that day. The thousands of interested persons did indeed crash the transcription site and the digital library, and more or less kept them offline for several days. From that point on, we were hooked and redirected most of our digital library efforts towards crowdsourcing projects. We renamed the site DIY History, expanded the scope to include a variety of topics and materials, such as handwritten cookbooks, and we used our early success to make a case for resources like programmers who have upgraded the site twice now. It's the current iteration. Technical enhancements included implementing a transcription crowdsourcing tool called Scripto, an open source program developed by George Mason Center for History and New Media. We ended up doing quite a few local customizations to George Mason's code and contributed that work to GitHub, where it's been reused by other libraries who look to Iowa as a model. And that includes my new friends at the Newberry who launched Civil War site of their own. DIY History currently has more than 56,000 transcribed pages and a stable core of users, supplemented with traffic spikes from web features by the likes of CNN, NBC News, and BuzzFeed. So although we're thrilled with the project's ongoing success, in terms of the library's core mission to support research and teaching at the university, we really weren't getting a lot of love on campus. Occasionally a grad student TA would use the site in one of their classes, but there was nothing programmatic until we partnered with a provost-sponsored initiative called IDEAL, and that stands for Iowa Digital Engagement and Learning. This was founded by 2 of our faculty members in rhetoric to develop innovative assignments using digital technology. This is the part where I would usually hand off to my faculty co-presenter, but I did not bring one, so I apologize if things start to get a little vague. IDEAL agreed to work with the library to develop a 4-week curriculum module based on DIY history for their freshman rhetoric classes. And according to some scholars, this is a good strategy, as crowdsourcing could be a key element in introducing digital humanities in the undergraduate classroom, especially at smaller institutions that lack a DH center of their own. Rebecca Frost Davis argues that crowdsourcing is beneficial for faculty because of its low barrier to entry. The digital technology already exists and someone else is maintaining it, so you can focus purely on teaching. You don't run into ethical issues with students paying tuition to do free labor on a faculty member's research project. And working with Crowdsourcing can act as a gateway for instructors to start experimenting with other digital humanities tools for their own scholarship. For students, participating in crowdsourcing initiatives involves high-impact practices that enhance learning, such as collaboration, performing authentic tasks, gaining knowledge of past cultures, and engaging with the humanities, which can only help with the crisis. So we had just a few modest goals for the assignment. We wanted students to learn about primary sources and archival research, as well as secondary sources, doing traditional library research. We wanted them to engage in multimodal composition to sharpen their rhetorical skills. And we wanted them to develop some digital literacy by both consuming digital media in the form of the digital collections and producing digital media, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We also wanted the assignment to be scalable. Rhetoric is taken, it's required for every one of our 5,000 freshmen every year. So we wanted to do the assignment once, offer it to instructors, and just work more efficiently through reuse. We wanted to put online so instructors at other institutions use it, and we wanted it to be sort of a series of modules so that people could swap in and out and interoperable. I think let's say interdisciplinary, so something that could be applied to history classes or anthropology. We ended up coming up with an assignment called Archives Alive, and it stretched over 4 weeks. So in the first week, students would explore the digital archive, they would select a document, and then they would transcribe it. Week 2, they would research the background of their letter or diary entry, and they would write blog entries. And this was important to avoid the 5-paragraph paper with the audience of 1. When students think other people are going to be reading their work, they do work harder on it. The essays, there were 2 of them, 500 words each. One on the rhetorical, when doing a rhetorical analysis of the letter, what is it trying to accomplish, how does it go about doing so, and one about the historical context, what was going on at the time, what are the events that are mentioned. Week 3, this was a screencast that students would learn to do, just sort of video with the Ken Burns effect, which it turns out if you say Ken Burns effect to teenagers, they don't really know what you're talking about. So it was just going over the letter, talking about different parts of it, and then those would be uploaded to YouTube. Week 4, there was a public presentation with a slideshow. The public presentation part was great. It happened in our library's Learning Commons, and students were very nervous, but it turned out that they actually liked, all the sort of background and chaos happening around them. So it's not just they're standing in the room listening to their own voice, like I'm doing this. Thank you very much. So how did it go? We did 2 semesters of piloting the assignment. We did some tweaking based on student feedback. Then we rolled it out. In the first rollout semester, there were 300 students, and so far, one instructor at another institution has taken it up. University of Maryland, they're teaching a feminist rhetoric class using some of the women's diaries. How did it go with the students? Well, the technology part was challenging, and that definitely, it was challenging for the students and for the instructors. It definitely helped having practice and kind of working out some software issues over time. But the struggle itself, some scholars argue that is actually not a bug but a feature. Jeffrey McClurkin wrote a blog post called Digital History and Undergraduate Digital Literacy that was republished in the book Hacked in the Academy. And he says a key but often overlooked aspect to digital literacy is a willingness to experiment with a variety of online tools and then to think critically and strategically about a project and to identify those tools that would be most useful to that project. And I'm plenty at length because I think this is very important. He goes on to say for students to be comfortable with being uncomfortable as they try new things. It's an important goal. Figuring out how to deal with constantly changing technology is something we are all dealing with. Yet in higher education, we often put students in new situations only when they first begin. Before long, they've got the process and procedures down and can churn out an 8 to 10 page paper in their sleep. Yet what kind of preparation is that for the larger world? Real learning happens when you're trying to figure out the controls, not when you're on autopilot. And that phrase, being comfortable with being uncomfortable, is kind of something of catchphrase in digital technology. One thing we did learn from this feedback, the big takeaway was the way they engaged with the manuscripts. It was very meaningful for them. They had reflection, blog essays, where they talked about the assignment, the different ways of the composition. But the big takeaway was working with the manuscripts and how, privileged they felt to see this first-hand view of history. One student said, in high school, I was never very interested in whatever research project was assigned me. It was very difficult to enjoy what I was doing with Archives Alive, but all I wanted to do was continue researching. This project taught me that when something interests you, it never really feels like research as much as it feels like learning more about an old friend or uncovering hidden, exciting secrets. One was pleasantly surprised that I found myself enjoying the research. Next time I'm home, I'm planning on reading through some of my grandpa's old letters. I'm interested in hearing about his personal experience and will hopefully get some good stories. My grandpa passed before I was born, so it will be a good bonding experience for us. And the last one, when I was researching, I realized just how little of Iowa, the state where I've lived my whole life, I actually know and have seen. I used to think that I knew everything about Iowa and how all the people here lived, but it really put into perspective exactly how little that I do know. To think of each little town, each with its own history and interactions, made me want to just drive around the state and see it for myself. Through these reflections by the students, we have one saying, the assignment made them want to learn more about history, one wanted to learn more about their family, and one wanted to learn more about their community. And this is where I was like, guys, I think we have solved the crisis in the humanities. Call off the debates, because we've done it. So that is Archives Live project. This is the URL where you can see all of the assignment documents if you want to give it a try yourself. And now we are going to head over to the Newberry.
Before we get moving down.
Oh. I will make sure that this, I should look at this. So over to the Newberry, where I have only been there for 3 months, so I'm doing a lot of catching up. But one new project, in very early stages, is, do you guys have a theme semester here? Have you heard of that? Some campuses, they have a theme semester, so all of the departments are encouraged to teach on that theme, and there's special events and lectures, and it's just supposed to, bring everyone together and make interdisciplinary discoveries. Long story short, we're doing one at the Newberry. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but it's just between you and me and the streaming audience on the video. research centers and library units, and their work can be siloed. So with this team semester, we hope both to work more effectively and expand our audience. So the first theme we're looking at is religious reform and dissent. As mentioned, this is not going to be a semester theme, it's going to be for 2 years. And the starting point is the quincentennial of Martin Luther's 95 Theses. And I heard that and I thought, that does not sound accessible for expanding our audience. So in my department, Digital Initiatives and Services, we are working with the Modern Manuscripts department, looking for collections with religious content, probably of interest to local history buffs or genealogists, maybe incorporate it into some of our classes. So we hope to digitize this stuff and maybe expand our transcription crowdsourcing site. So just a few quick possible examples. The Newberry holds the Zion City, Illinois records. These date from 1899 to 1907, and they document the founding of the Christian Catholic Church and the Christian utopian city of Zion. There's the papers of Graham Taylor, spanning 1866 to about 1940. He was a minister, social worker, professor, and founder of the Chicago Common Settlement House. And finally, we have records of the First Presbyterian Church of Chicago, and there are nearly 90 linear feet of documents dating back to 1833. But 4 of the boxes are particularly high use. They're from the late 1960s, and those are about the Blackstone Rangers, which was either a group of civil rights activists or a thuggish street gang, according to who you ask. The First Presbyterian believed it was the former, so they provided space in the church for Blackstone's training centers, and that is documented in the collection. So hopefully there will be some digitized handwritten correspondence and other documents from those collections coming soon, and coming even sooner. And this is my last example. We have a Mellon-funded site in progress on French paleography, and that is been put together by the Newberry Center for Renaissance Studies in partnership with 3 other institutions. We're building an online transcription tool for teaching students how to decipher French handwriting from 1400 to 1650. The site will include 4 major components: a web hub with an image viewer, a state-of-the-art transcription tool, a set of reference sources, and a community tools area. That's from the press release, so I'm not really available for questions on that one. But that they hope to have a pilot ready in January 2016. The big difference between this site and the others I've shown you is that this is purely a pedagogical tool. So it's designed for classroom use, and all of the student transcriptions are discarded after the class is done. Some people find controversial, but it totally makes sense to me. Otherwise, we'd have to constantly scan more manuscripts to keep the project going, which would be very resource intensive. So if you want to know more, I will happily direct you to my Renaissance Studies colleagues. And I will now attempt to answer questions on other topics, or you are welcome to email. Who's first? Tracy.
I was curious about the Archives Alive project. So how did the students select the document that they were going to transcribe? Were they assigned? Like, was there a sense that, like, pity the kid who got the one about the weather, like what they were going to come up with?
We tended to really put a lot of resources in this because we were super excited to be in the classroom. So we tended to sort of time a collection launch around the semester, part of the semester where they were doing this project. So the first one, it was pioneer letters, and we actually kind of kept those materials cordoned off from the rest of the public because they will stay up all night and transcribe everything. The second time, it was World War II letters and diaries, so students were encouraged to all be working on the same set of materials, but they were allowed to look around for other things as well. In terms of selecting and transcribing, Iowa has the smart classrooms where it's the little clusters of tables and the large screens. So that happened in one of those, and it was just students kind of paging through, helping each other decipher stuff. And some of them made the mistake of picking one that was short, because it was like a little less work to transcribe. But then they had to spend the next, like 3.5 weeks teasing stuff out of these 3 sentences. So yeah, they learned. Yes.
Hi, Ian.
Hi.
Digital initiatives right here.
What's up, counterpart?
I know, yeah, share title, it's awesome. How did you moderate some of the crowdsource materials, like some of the edits and choices that they made? I was just curious. Fair enough.
That can be sort of controversial in crowdsourcing projects. Some institutions, they check over every submission before they put it into a metadata record. I believe the Newberry follows that model. I personally think the resources, one set of Humanities doing this already. If you're going to have someone working on it as well, like a paid employee, what's the point? So at Iowa, we would trust the crowd. There were tools for correcting submitted texts, and we just hope for gradual improvement.
But how did you prevent not good sentence
Thing
quality?
is, that just generally does not happen. It's not really been a problem. The Library of Congress and the National Library of Australia, they both put out reports, and they showed the instances of any sort of vandalism, and it was just minuscule. I did once see one after a Reddit happened. Trying to enter something pornographic, but they figured we had, filters for that, which we totally didn't. It was actually very creative. So it was a very creative pornographic submission that we corrected.
You corrected the anatomy? Or you
It was, it completely did not match the letter, so it's just like fan fiction, Civil War.
So there is